The honourable member for Durham.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege for me to rise today in this House to echo the comments of my colleagues on this side, but also on the other side of this House, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the importance of honouring, recognizing and remembering the service of many Canadians in Afghanistan. And it's also important to thank the honourable member for Palliser for his tireless efforts in this regard, championing the concept of a memorial and of remembering. And I also want to compliment the member from Sault Ste. Marie, whom I had the pleasure of serving on the Veterans Affairs Committee, for a tireless champion for the men and women of the Canadian Forces, Mr. Speaker, and for our veterans. This is really a motion that should get support from all members in this House, Mr. Speaker, and it sounds to me today that this debate is indicating that this is one of these rare but very important moments in this House where we unite to do the right thing, to pay respect to those who have served on our behalf. Our government, and indeed all members of this House, support paying tribute and remembering Canadians who have served and who are serving, Mr. Speaker, in Afghanistan, because as we know, we still have men and women due to return to Canada at the end of March. So we're in our final 2 months of this very important mission that our Canadian forces served on our behalf. I had the privilege, Mr. Speaker, before I was elected to Parliament, to be here in Ottawa, in the Senate, to watch the ceremony related to the end of the mission in Libya, Mr. Speaker. And General Bouchard, who was the Canadian officer that led the international effort with respect to Libya, Mr. Speaker. And that was a short mission, but a successful one, a multilateral one, where Canadian expertise, precision, and leadership played an important role, and that was recognized. Afghanistan has been one of our longest missions as a country, Mr. Speaker. There has been blood expended. 158 of our finest people have given their lives, so we certainly not only have to memorialize them, but to remember their service and the contribution they made to peace and security and to a better life for many in that country. And where I stand today, Mr. Speaker, represents the sacrifices Canadians have made and our tradition of heeding the call to serve the wider global good since the founding of our country. The very Peace Tower, Mr. Speaker, the Book of Remembrance turns a page each day, and on each page are names of young men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And beneath that tower, Mr. Speaker, we're in a chamber that allows speech, debate, lively at times, that has been secured by their sacrifice. We need to remember that as we debate important motions like this. Not far from me, Mr. Speaker, on the west side of Centre Block lays the Vimy Stone, which was built by the Masons into the side of a rebuilt Parliament of Canada following fire the year before, when the stonemasons heard of Canada's tremendous victory at Vimy Ridge and laid a special Vimy stone in the building that they were building, representing our democracy here in Canada and the security we enjoy because we have sent our sons and daughters to other parts of the world to ensure that security is spread, even though we are protected by, in many cases, the blanket of distance, Mr. Speaker. I've referred many times in my short time here to the the statue of George Baker in the foyer here of the Commons, a sitting member of Parliament who died on the battlefields of World War I. I've also spoken about my intention to work with others in Parliament to honour the memory of Colonel Sam Sharp, the MP from Uxbridge in my riding, who died during World War I, Mr. Speaker, but died after suffering the stresses of war at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal. I'm going to work with colleagues to make sure that that sacrifice is remembered as well. We're steps really from the National War Monument, where each November Canadians gather amid cold, amid sleet, amid snow, to pay respect to our veterans and to honour the memory of those who never returned to Canada, whether from the fields of Europe, whether from the battlefields of Korea, whether on peacekeeping duties or in active service on NATO missions, Mr. Speaker, or indeed in recent years as a result of service in Kandahar and parts of Afghanistan. We remember them, and we remember the unknown soldier at the National War Monument. In Confederation Park, we have the Korean War Monument not far from here. Last year, our government inaugurated 2013, the year of the Korean veteran, Mr. Speaker, because governments should have honored that many years ago. In some ways, veterans have called that the forgotten war. We have a monument in Confederation Park, which is also home to a monument to some of our First Nations veterans, Mr. Speaker. Important for Canadians visiting their capital to see these important memorials. Some of our VC winners, Victoria Cross, our highest award for gallantry, line Wellington Street, mere yards from here as well, Mr. Speaker. And if you turn onto Sussex Drive, there is a striking and important monument to our peacekeepers and the many missions that Canada served since we in many ways helped spearhead the concept of a stability and security force as part of our multilateral efforts through the United Nations. So within this context, Mr. Speaker, the mission in Afghanistan deserves particular attention because it has been our most significant military engagement since Korea and one of our longest engagements in terms of period of time that Canadians have been committed in terms of sacrifice, in terms of our treasure, our resources to this mission, to our diplomatic efforts. We need to have a memorial, and we need to make sure we write the histories and remember the sacrifice in this critical part of our history. As I said, 158 Canadians, Mr. Speaker, gave their life in service of where their country sent them. As a former military officer, and as some members of this House know, there's an unlimited liability contract a soldier signs with the military when they serve their country. Fortunately, the vast majority don't provide that unlimited liability, Mr. Speaker, but 158 of our best and brightest did, and they deserve a proper memorial. Over 2,000 members were injured in service, Mr. Speaker, and will continue to show the signs of their sacrifice for our country. We must work with them to remember their colleagues and tell their stories, Mr. Speaker. We lost a diplomat, a journalist, and lost 5 civilians, Mr. Speaker. We must tell those stories, teach our children, so that the memory remains alive. There are monuments already forming. Canadians, in many ways, gave probably the most touching tribute when they showed up on highways during our repatriations. Now there's a repatriation monument in Trenton, and Canada Company, One Cav Motorcycle Club, Legions, and average Canadians donated to make that happen. There's the Portraits of Honor, a stunning series by artist Dave Sofa that has toured the country. Some of the events I used to organize in my charitable work, Mr. Speaker, we had those portraits at those events to see the faces of our fallen. And as the Minister of Justice and the MP for Edmonton Centre have proposed recently, and members of the Canadian Forces have said, the Trans-Canada Trail has the potential to honour our fallen. Perhaps even portions of our trail uniting our country near the communities where our fallen came from, Mr. Speaker. And most importantly, the cenotaphs around this country mark the combat role Canada played in Afghanistan in our service. My community of Bowmanville honoured Trooper Daryl Caswell on our cenotaph, Mr. Speaker. Cenotaphs across Canada rarely get touched for generations, but this mission touched cenotaphs across our country. I know the family of Captain Matthew Daw, another fine Canadian that we lost in Afghanistan, Captain Nicholas Goddard. The list goes on because they also will be marked on the cenotaphs in their communities, Mr. Speaker. And these are times where we need to mark their service and what they gave in pursuit of Canadian goals and ideals around the world, mark it in their community at their cenotaph with their Legion members and their families, but also mark it here in our nation's capital. And Mr. Speaker, I want to end with some words from Rupert Brooke's poem, The Dead, part of it. Some of these words are found on the memorial arch on the grounds of RMC. Cadets march in through it and then march out through it. And these are those words, Mr. Speaker, if you'll indulge. Blow out, you bugles, over the rich dead, There's none of these so lonely and poor of old, but dying has made us rarer gifts than gold. These laid the worlds away, poured out the red sweet wine of youth, gave up the years to be of work and joy, and that unhoped serene, that men call age, and those who would have been their sons, they gave their immortality. Blow bugles blow, they brought us for our dearth, holiness, lack so long, and love and pain. Honor has come back as a king to earth, and paid his subjects with a royal wage, and nobleness walks in our ways again. And we have come into our heritage. We can show our heritage with this monument, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for your indulgence.